Hello and welcome to this presentation on cognitive load theory in technology-driven classrooms. I'm Jim Ellis, and we'll be talking about this theory and how it applies to today's instructional designers. So first of all, some general background. This cognitive load theory was developed in the 1980s and 90s as different emerging studies were very interested in how the use of media, computers, video, would affect learners. So obviously during this time, we have the onset of computers. The computer age was emerging, and also the ability for anyone to add video to a learning situation. So there was a lot of transition going on in learning and development era, and so there was a lot of studies going on in that, and this particular theory was developed during that time. Uh, this particular study determined that the human mind, the brain, is able to only really concentrate on about 2 to 4 different objects at one time. And you can understand this too in the normal sense that in an everyday situation, your mind processes thousands, millions, billions of pieces of information every day, and it chooses to either concentrate on or disregard certain objects, things like that. So even in a learning development world, it can only process so much information on a computer screen, and if there is a tendency to overstimulate the brain, it can simply shut down and refuse basically to intake anything else. To kind of illustrate this, many of you may have seen this video before, but I wanted to illustrate it with this particular type of video. If you have seen it before, you can watch it again. I always get a kick out of it. If you haven't, follow the instructions. This particular software doesn't allow the computer to do audio, so I'll kind of provide the audio, but frankly, there's not really that much audio. It's just a basic awareness test. They want you to watch the white team and see how many passes they actually make with the basketball. So if you guess 13, you guessed correct.
But did you see the moonwalking bear?
But did you see the moonwalking bear? So obviously this is an ad for motorcyclists, but it's very effective in illustrating that your mind is, especially when it's concentrating on one particular thing, can totally lose track of, sight of other things. You can see things that you should be seeing or not seeing. So again, the human brain can only process really truly a finite amount of information at one time. So as this applies to learning and development, how much information, how much words, how much things are we trying to throw on a screen at one time? It can't process it all. It's pointless. So the cognitive load theory is the concept that an instructional designer should consider how much material and objects are shown to a learner at any given moment. The more complex these objects are, and especially the contrast between them, can pose a pretty substantial roadblock for the processing of that information. So that contrast is huge. So you'll even notice in the previous video, the teams were black and white. You can't get much higher contrast than that. So as your brain is trying to process this high contrast amount of information, it's very easy to miss things. So as far as application goes, within the learning and development environment, there is already debates about how much media should be added or could be added, and really there's kind of two different polar opposite different views of of this type of concept. So either you're on, it seems, on one side, or you're completely on the other side. Where one side is, it's totally minimalist. It's absolutely nothing. It's black text on white screens, not a picture in sight, maybe a corporate logo. I've seen that. It's terrible. However, the opposite is true as well, where you have the group that is all about gamification, pictures, scenarios, interactions, maybe flash animation, where it's the total opposite of that. So we have these two opposing views on this cognitive load theory, where yeah, we need to just give just the absolute minimum versus, you know what, we can handle it, and you know what, they'll be able to figure it out. Frankly, I think a good instructional designer should be aware of the amount of information that they are putting on a particular slide or given at one point in time if it is a video type of illustration. There's got to be a fine balance. Like anything in life, it's never usually the extremes of either end of a opposing view that is correct. It's neither the extremes, it's always a fine balance of the two. There should be an equal amount of information as to media as well, and the media should obviously complement, it should supplement and not distract, and so that fine balance, I think, should always be weighed, and I think the cognitive load theory also would illustrate that as well. For my references, this was based on an article that I read entitled Cognitive Load Theory and Complex Learning, and it was published in the Educational Psychology Review in 2005. Thanks so much.